So I decided to interview my two parents. I know them obviously because they're my parents. They adopted me from Guatemala. Um, and why did I choose to interview them? I think just because um, they have a different perspective of the world, than me. Because I'm Guatemalan, obviously not white, and yeah, they are white. And just to hear their different experiences and to get a different viewpoint of, like, for instance, them, like, growing up and kind of like, yeah, just a different encounters or experiences they've had, and just get a different perspective, I would say. So I think that something I learned that I didn't really know before the interview, or, like, I guess understand, is just the fact that, like, for instance, my mom, grew up, and she didn't have as many opportunities to, join sports teams. I didn't realize that, I mean, I kind of knew, like, from the history, but like from history, but like I just didn't really know to that extent that, like, you know females and women didn't really have, as at all, like, very many opportunities in a lot of different ways. And for instance, like, when my mom said, like, that there were only a certain jobs that women could really have, I just really kind of opened my eyes to that, I would say. I think what makes our relationship, my parents and me's relationship, an intercultural relationship, is because I'm Hispanic, or Latino, and they're white. So I think, yeah, that is a big reason why. And just I'd say the differences. Like, I grew up a different way than they did. I experienced a lot of different things than they did, and yeah, they experienced a world in a different way than I did. And for, like, example, like, biggest thing is, my mom's obviously a woman, a female, so she obviously experiences the world from a different way, and it's a different cultural group, I would say. And I don't really think my relationship with my parents has really been affected at all. Um, Really, at all. Yeah, from the cultural differences, just because they're my parents. So I think it's pretty easy how my parents connect with their cultural group, because everyone, or most people around where we live, are white, and yeah, and that's mostly, like, I would say, the people that my parents hang out with. Um, I don't mean, I'd say that they relate very well, to people from different cultural groups. Just for example, like, I had um, friends growing up that were all adopted from different countries, and yeah, that was a pretty cool experience. But I wanted to say too that where it talks about intercultural relationship development processes on page 131, 132, I found it interesting that it talked about, as a whole, white students were the least likely to interact outside of their own group. Black, Latino, and Pacific Island were more likely to interact with one another, though they were still less likely to have interracial, let's see, then interracial interactions during college. I think it was interesting where my mom talked about, she said, like, when she first went to college, everyone kind of, like, stayed in their own cultural groups. And I think I found that really interesting, because, like, for me, I talked to anyone at the college, and I mean, it's just interesting how it's, like, very much shifted, because I mean, I'll talk to anyone. Yeah, it's pretty. So the final term I want to talk about that relates to my interview is pop culture. So it says on pages 182 and 183, people use mass-produced forms of popular culture to reflect and construct identities, as well as display and enact values. Popular culture refers to systems and artifacts that the general populace, or broad masses within a society, share, or about which most people have an understanding. And I would say, a good example of that, as I talked about in the interview with my parents, is just the fact that, like, growing up, I was always playing, like, rap music, because my friends liked that a lot. And I was always, like, kind of the music that was popular at that time. And I would say, every day when I call my dad, I always tell him, oh, what's going on in the world of sports, because he's a big Minnesota sports fan, just like I am. So I always just tell him what's going on, kind of all the different updates. And yeah, whenever I'm home, which I usually live with my parents, but when I'm home, I'm always watching, like, a game on the TV, whether that be, like, a Twins game, but just, yeah, any recent game. So I think I've kind of integrated pop culture into our household and shared it with my parents a lot. But overall, yeah, I would say this was a really fun experience. It was really cool to learn, about more about my parents and where they come from, and just, yeah, broaden my horizons, I think, a little bit. So on page, let's see here, 140, I think it goes a little bit into 141 of Catherine Sorrell's Intercultural Communication, Globalization, and Social Justice, third edition book. It talks about social networking sites. And I would say, I guess some examples of those would be like Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. I know those are social media sites, but I think those are really great examples of that because it gives people a chance to connect with people that they might not normally talk to. For example, I'm interviewing someone, this past week I interviewed someone from an African American male from the cities that's going to the NFL draft. So that was really cool. But I think it just provides people with the ability to connect with other people that they wouldn't be able to talk to normally. Also, in closing, I forgot to add from the textbook from Catherine Sorrell's Intercultural Communication, Globalization, and Social Justice, edition 3. I forgot to add that on page 131 to 132 and 182 to 183, I used quotes / reference. And I did correctly reference the other one, but I just wanted to make sure that I had my citations on there. So I would say that my parents relate to people like outside of our own cultural or their own cultural group, just because, for example, my dad has been to so many different countries, and yeah, he's a geographer, and I'd say my parents really do assimilate well. Like they have friends from all different cultures and yeah, all different countries, which I think is really cool.